that is spoken about only in whispers. A dark area that spawns the beginnings of urban legends. A place where anything can happen and usually does. During the light of day, it hides just outside of view. But when the sun goes down, spirits, creatures of the night, roam free, and things do go bump in the night. It is in every state and every country, and there is no escaping it, no matter how safe you feel behind your locked doors and latched windows. So we invite you to turn down the lights and turn up your radio while we join Dave Schrader and Tim Dennis, your hosts, on a journey into the darkness on the edge of town.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us on Darkness Radio. I'm Dave. That's Tim. We've got a great show lined up for you. A little bit later on in the show, we're going to do a little bit more of our Parashare. We've got a lot of stories we couldn't get to, so we're going to fill in some of that in the third hour. First 2 hours are lined up. We're going to cover that in a few minutes. I do want to make a quick mention. We do have an iHeartRadio page now. For those of you that are intrigued in hearing the show in podcast form, would like to know how to do so easier, just go to iHeartRadio, spell it all out, iHeartRadio.com, and type in Darkness Radio. Or on your smartphones, you can get the free application iHeartRadio. We're on AM 1130 KTLK. That's KTLK. AM 1130, the Twin Cities News Talk station, so you can stream the show live or find our Darkness Radio podcasts right there as well. So you can stream the show 24/7 right from your phone on our page. It's never been easier to listen to the show, and to make it even easier for other people to.
Yeah.
We've got a Droid application.
Yes, we do.
So from any kind of Droid tool that you use, go into your Google Play Store and download Darkness Radio. It's a free application there. It gives you all this cool ways to interact with Tim and I, and it gives you ways to listen to all of our podcasted shows. So that's on the application there. So we've got the Droid application. We've got the iHeartRadio application. You can also check us out at darknessradio.com or over at our personality page at twincitiesnewstalk.com, keyword darkness, where you're going to find all kinds of cool news stories, videos, promos, and things that we've got up on the site. Plus, you can listen to our podcasts right from that site as well. Mm-hmm. It's never been easier to find us, man. We're everywhere.
You can't miss us, I don't
We're
think.
on Roku, Stitcher, Podbay, TuneIn, FM, what is it, FM.com, I think?
Something like that.
We're everywhere. Yeah. So just, you want to find us, you'll be able to find us. We're there. Tonight, we're going to take a trip, Tim, into the Omniverse. You ready for that?
I am ready for that,
Transdimensional intelligence, time travel, the afterlife, and the secret colony on Mars. That's next on Darkness Radio. Yale Law School, and a former Fulbright scholar. He's taught economics at Yale University and constitutional law at the University of Texas. He's a former general counsel to the New York City Environmental Protection Administration, former director of the 1977 Carter White House Extraterrestrial Communications Study, and former NGO delegate to the United Nations. He's the author of Exopolitics, Politics, Government, and Law in the Universe. He is the recognized founder of Exopolitics and the Science of Relations Among Intelligent Civilizations in the Multiverse. His new book, The Omniverse, Transdimensional Intelligence, Time Travel, the Afterlife, and the Secret Colony on Mars, is officially released, I guess, November 22nd. So I thought it'd be great to bring him on the show, talk a little bit about the book, and share some of these insights. Alfred, thank you for joining us this evening, sir.
Certainly, I'm very, very happy to join you. I've discussed a number of the matters in this book with one of your distinguished former governors.
Oh, Jesse Ventura. Sure.
On his TV shows. So there's a certain amount of relevance and knowledge that I have with your area.
Now, let me ask you this really quickly. I've heard of alternate universes. I've heard of multiverses. Can you explain to our audience what is the Omniverse?
Sure. This is actually the first, it's, I'll just say, just to kind of give myself some room. This is one of the first, if not the first, science-based book on the omniverse ever written. And if you Google books on the omniverse, you'll come up with a lot of science fiction books, but you won't come up with any science books. And if you go back in our history, starting with the universe, it was the Sumerian astronomers that first defined the entity that we know as a universe, and that was about 3500 BC. And in 1895, it was the American psychologist and novelist William James who coined the term multiverse. And what the multiverse means is the collection of all of the universes that exist. And what a universe is a self-contained organic collection of time, energy, space, and matter. And so what we've been able to discover, and this is thanks to two Stanford physicists over the last couple of years, is that they've been able to number the number of multiverses the number of universes in the multiverse. And what they've said is that number is so large that the human mind cannot comprehend it. However, if we were to write out the number of universes in the multiverse, say in 12-point type on a typewriter or on a computer, that number would be more than 260 million miles long.
Wow.
That's how many universes of time, space, energy, and matter there are in the multiverse. Now, to get to your question, first humanity defined the universe, then it defined the multiverse as a collection of all of the universes, and now we're coming along to define the omniverse. And so, what are the technical definitions of each? Well, working backwards, what the omniverse is, the omniverse equals all of the universes in the multiverse, which
okay,
stated, plus the intelligent civilization of souls and the spiritual dimensions, plus what we call source or God in the spiritual dimensions of the omniverse. In other words, everything that is in time, space, energy, and matter, that is something that we can deal with in terms of mathematical equations and can measure in our material world that we inhabit as material beings. In our world of time, energy, space, and matter, we call a universe. And then we have the collection of all of the universes. And then the new entity, which we call the omniverse, has come about because we've now developed, according to the scientific method, which we never had before in our history, we have not had it in the modern era. We've never had a way of using what we call the scientific method, which is where you take replicable evidence that you can replicate, and so that's what the scientific method is. You have a standard protocol and laboratory experiments and replicable results, and that comes out to being what's accepted as new knowledge. Well, we have now been able to develop scientific protocols to establish the existence of what we call the intelligent civilization of souls and of spiritual beings and even of God. And all of this exists outside of the universes of time, energy, space, and matter. And so that's why the canon of science, which is what they teach in the universities, has never recognized the human afterlife. They've never recognized the human soul. They've never recognized a God. They've never recognized things like reincarnation as being matters of science, but rather matters of belief. But that has changed now. And so with that change, with all of the databases that we have with regard to the spiritual dimensions, the intelligent civilization of souls, of spiritual beings, and of God, we can now term this larger entity, omnibus, comes from the Latinate meaning all. The omniverse means that which contains all. It contains all of the universes of time, energy, space, and matter, which contains all of the beings and all the planets and all of the galaxies and all of the different universes that have been discovered and that we can postulate according to the rules of canonical science. The multiverse equals the sum of all of those universes, and now the omniverse is the sum of all those plus what we can now map in a replicable way using the tools of science and not using the tools of belief in religions or spiritual belief. And that's what makes up the rest of the omniverse. And as we'll see, it is the spiritual dimensions, that is, God, the spiritual beings, and the intelligent civilization of souls that functionally create all of the universes that exist for specific purposes, which are mainly soul development. All of the universes have basically been created so that souls, which are outside of time, outside of space and time, can incarnate in any one of the many universes as a diversity of beings, as humans. They can incarnate as birds. They can incarnate as any sort of animal, any sort of form. Advanced intelligence can take many, many different forms. And so the creatures from it's the intelligent civilization of souls and the spiritual beings and God that create and maintain the universes into which souls incarnate. Now, that is the general proposition that many religions over millennia have held. But now, what we can do is we can prove that this is scientifically correct. So this is sort of an expected or a prophesized development, which is what they call the integration of science and spirituality, showing that science, in the end, will prove and will justify and will show as true many of the basic tenets of religion, even though if you get down to the nitty-gritty, many of the current religions are promoting versions of reality that are technically incorrect because they're based on ancient texts that are considered sacred, but they aren't scientifically correct, and we're finding that out now. So it's a very exciting time when science can come in and both justify spiritual beliefs and also correct them.
Now, what you've been discussing and talking about, I've got a few listeners who've been hitting me up on the social media site saying this sounds a lot like M theory. And are you familiar with M theory, and is there a difference between the omniverse and the M theory?
M theory?
Right.
Is that like string theory?
Where M theory is a theory in physics that unifies all consistent versions of superstring theory, the existence of a theory that was, again, conjectured by Edward Witten, according to this article, at a string theory conference at the University of Southern California back in 1995. And then I guess it's just a complete formulation of M theory is not known yet. It says in this article the theory should describe 2- and 5-dimensional objects. But it sounds kind of like this universal gathering of all of these different constructs of beliefs and systems that are at play around us at all times. So it almost sounds like the multiverse theory.
Well,
or the omniverse, I should say.
Now, where the theory of the omniverse and the hypothesis of the dimensional ecology of the omniverse goes, I think, a step beyond M theory and beyond string theory, is that M theory and string theory do not really address an intelligent source of reality.
But you believe that with what you've got, it does prove that there is an intelligent source over us, a God particle or a God being, I guess would be the best way to describe it.
Well,
because it would almost seem like this science would fly in the face of that, and that if we truly have the abilities, as outlined in the book, that we're kind of our own God, aren't we, in creating the realities that we perceive and experience?
Yes. You have stated many truths, and however, there are slight distinctions there which I'd like to make, and where the omniverse, where the postulation of the omniverse goes beyond M theory and goes beyond string theory and establishes, according to the principles of holography, the hologram, that each of us souls, because our finding has been that each soul is a holographic fragment of Source, in the sense that if Source or God can be visualized as a sea of light, the process by which souls are created or manufactured in kind of almost an assembly line state, is that each soul is a holographic fragment of God. And so by the principles of holography, the whole is contained in each part of the whole. And so each of us, insofar as we vouchsafe our inner souls, that is, our souls that are incarnating now inside of a universe, because right now, all of us listening to this radio program, I would assume, have our souls, and we are incarnating now inside of a universe, incarnating in our avatars. Mine's Alfred, you've got Dave, you've got Tim, you've got everybody listening, and our souls, which are holographic fragments of God, under the principles of holography, are functionally God. So when you have certain religious traditions say namaste, which means I salute the God within you, that's very literal. We're actually 7 billion gods walking around on the planet, although we've all chosen to incarnate on Earth, which we could go into a lot of background on, which from an exopolitical point of view is a highly impacted planet and a very difficult planet to incarnate in. Although we get a lot of soul development points for incarnating on Earth and for leading earthly lives here. Now, to get back to your question, I know that it's kind of hard. Where the omniverse differs from M theory and string theory is that M theory and string theory think about proceed from the created universes themselves outward toward outer dimensions. In fact, reality is constructed in an opposite way. What was constructed first was the spiritual dimensions, that is source, spiritual beings, and souls. And once there was a quantum of that, then universes came into being, which are, you can think of a universe as kind of a machine for developing souls into gods. And so once a universe is developed, which it's part of the omniverse, but it's separate because it's time, energy, space, and matter. And the spiritual dimensions are non-temporal, non-local, non-material. And so what the universes are and what we as souls spend our time doing is we spend our time incarnating in them so that we, come in here and we have lessons for moral development, et cetera, and between lives, we also spend our time coming in and building up each of the universes. We'll go in and we'll adjust time in a universe. We'll help in the construction of a galaxy. We'll help in the
Well, Alfred, we have to take a break. Let's take a break. I mean, this sounds so matter of fact, but I mean, it seems such a very, intensive concept, and we need to kind of rectify that. How can something that's so powerful, so intensive, be so simple? We'll discuss that with our guest when we return. Our veterans and service people across the United States and around the world serving, thank you so much for the sacrifice that you've done and given to this country, and we can't tell you how much we appreciate it. I know both Tim and I have many service members in our family. Yep. And you are in our thoughts and prayers constantly for protection and safeguarding. And it's breaking my heart, Tim. I'm reading news stories left and right on Veterans Day of veterans just getting ripped off and cheated left and right. Yeah. Treated like trash and left out. I understand a lot of why people are so against foreign people just coming into the country and getting things handed to them. Mm-hmm. And I understand that this is a country of opportunity, mm-hmm. but it is heartbreaking to watch that people that have fought for that right that are being left behind. Oh, absolutely. And it's crushing. There's got to be something done about this. But just understand that we respect and love all of you for doing what you do, and for all the families who have sacrificed their sons, mothers, husbands, brothers, cousins, nieces, nephews, whatever. We appreciate their sacrifice in the name of the United States. Mm-hmm. So thank you very much. It was so disturbing today. Yeah. On a day when we should be reflecting on all of the great things that have been done to see that in a lot of ways our government has turned its back on the people that it put out on the front line is just disheartening.
Very much so,
Yeah, very scary stuff. Real quickly, I do want to make a mention. I'm going to be at the Palmer House in February. If you'd like to join us, Bill Chappell and myself, we're going to be out there investigating the number one most ranked haunted hotel in the United States, the Palmer House in Sauk Center, Minnesota. Bill Chappell from Ghost Adventures, who you've seen him create most of the equipment that they've used on that, along myself, and a couple other special guests will be going up to the Palmer House in February to investigate and hang out. So you can find information and tickets over at darknessevents.com. That's darknessevents.com. And in Germany and Prague, the Frankenstein Tour, we're getting ready to launch that. If you're interested, you can email me, dave@darknessradio.com. If you've already emailed in, just be patient. We should have all that information hammered out here relatively soon. But if you're interested in joining us on that trip to Germany and Prague and going on a paranormal tour through 2 different countries, then just shoot me an email with the keyword Germany or Prague, and we'll get you in the list so we can email you about it immediately. But it is looking to be an amazing trip, and it's going to go fast. We've got people that have attended events in Romania, Scotland, and Ireland that are ready to sign up, so these spots are going to fill up quickly. If you're interested, email me, dave@darknessradio.com. The Omniverse, that's what we're discussing tonight. Transdimensional intelligence, time travel, the afterlife, and the secret colony on Mars. Alfred, I got to make sure I get all these names right. Tim Lambermont Weber, our guest, when we return right here on Darkness Radio. Alfred Lambermont Weber, our guest this evening. He is the author of a book called The Omniverse, Transdimensional Intelligence, Time Travel, the Afterlife, and the Secret Colony on Mars. Alfred, explain to me, you talked about the fact that now we can prove the science is going to be able to prove these things because they are replicable, especially in scientific settings. What specifically, can you give me 2 solid examples of something like time travel or the afterlife that we can actually prove, or we can prove scientifically either now or very soon?
Sure. And I'm glad that you used the word proof because where I'm coming from is this. I have a background as a lawyer, a law professor, and a judge. I was a war crime judge. I taught law at a couple of universities. And so I'm familiar with the law of evidence. And so what our model of the universe is constructed around is the law of evidence. And how one can take replicable evidence and then say, give certain thresholds of proof. For example, in a criminal trial, the threshold of proof is beyond a reasonable doubt. In other words, did this person, hold up a bank and steal that money beyond a reasonable doubt, or is it beyond a reasonable doubt that they committed a murder? However, in the civil law, the threshold is different. It's more probably than not. Can a reasonable person conclude that more probably than not, intelligent life exists on Mars, given the evidence? And so that's the approach that we've taken in this book. We've gathered empirical evidence from a wide variety of areas, both as to the universes, as to the multiverse, and as to the omniverse. For example, with regard to the 2 areas that you mentioned, time travel and the afterlife. Well, let's take let's take time travel. For the past 15 years, I've spent a good deal of my professional time as an exopolitician interviewing former chrononauts, that is, time travelers from secret time travel programs of the U.S. government. And I've interviewed...
Now, was that because you worked with the government, you had access to these people, or did they seek you out?
Well, they have sought me out, i.e., over my career, over the past 40 years, I have sought to make a great deal of secret information public. And so that, for example, I was the director of the proposed Carter White House extraterrestrial communication project in 1977, whereby, as a futurist at Stanford Research Institute, I brought on the Carter White House, the National Science Foundation, a number of scientists to construct, under the rubric of an official government project, the first civilian, i.e., non-military study of communication with extraterrestrial intelligent civilizations, and so over the 40 years, we've developed a tremendous database. And
have you ever been concerned? Have you ever been concerned, Alfred, that maybe since you were trying to leak information that was secretive, could the government or other parties be feeding you false information, making claims that they're chrononauts, that people like this that are coming forward to you are only doing it in order to try to discredit you down the line and show that if this was proven incorrect, how much of your other research is legitimate?
Well, yeah, I mean, these are very difficult areas in which to research, because you're dealing with multiple stakeholders, mm-hmm. a number of whom exist in different dimensions. The interdimensional ETs that you're studying are based in different dimensions from the third time-space dimension that we are based in, number one. Number two, when you're dealing with the U.S. government and, say, the Western spacefaring nations, the U.S., the U.K., they have, by and large, entered into secret treaties with what we would call manipulatory ETs, such as the Draco reptilians. These are...
But how do we know that for a fact?
We know that because of the process of exopolitics, and that's a social science. And that's a social science like anthropology, like history, and that social science goes forward on the basis of documents, on the basis of witnesses, and so you begin to judge and to evaluate the testimony of witnesses, the testimony of documents. You can evaluate the statements of interdimensional ETs when they, when you're able to get their statements. And so...
And have you been able to do that, interview actual extraterrestrials?
Well, I have not interviewed, except for one instance, an extraterrestrial face-to-face. However,
well, that's a pretty good. Even one is pretty amazing. How did you get a chance to meet with an extraterrestrial face-to-face?
I was approached by them in 1973. However, I'm not totally certain of the nature of that interaction. Because it was all telepathic, and so these are frontier sciences, and so when someone's communicating with you telepathically, and you don't see a body, you don't know exactly who that person is.
Okay, so it wasn't exactly face to face.
They say,
right,
I am X, Y, and Z.
Well,
so
we know that there's technology that exists where
take down the information and then evaluate it along with all of the other information that you have.
We know that there's technology that exists that can be beamed into your head to make you hear voices, make you feel manipulated, and like you're having a conversation. How do we know that?
So that's why I say I don't know that was an extraterrestrial. That could have been a voice to skull that was beamed into me to make me think that I was interacting with an extraterrestrial. However, apart from that, and I've written about them, and you can go to extrapolitics.com, I've been involved in a number of events whereby a group of us call in extraterrestrial craft, and they have been photographed, and I've interacted telepathically with the people on the ship. And these are ships that are a half a kilometer across.
We're coming up to the break time here. We've got news to report on, things that'll come up for the next 5-6 minutes. We'll come back with our guest, spend the next hour with him as well. Interesting stuff. Hey, by the way, go check out our personality page. If you haven't had a chance to do that, this is a great time to do it. Go to TwinCitiesNewsTalk.com. TwinCitiesNewsTalk.com, keyword darkness. There you can follow along with our musings, our news stories, strange things. We try to put up 2 to 3 things a night, so that you can go check it out and see for yourself. And we did a story a week ago, Tim, where she called herself the worst mother ever. And that story made me laugh out loud during the show. She gave me permission today. We can print that and put it up on the page. It is truly one of my favorite stories that we've ever heard on Parashare. So you need to hear it for yourself. You can read it, share it with others. We'll have it up over at TwinCitiesNewsTalk.com. Keyword darkness. Go check that out. And don't forget, we've got the new wishing machine contest going on with Joshua P. Warren. If you'd like to win the brand new wishing machine radionics box, email me. We'll put your name in. Only email once, though, and we'll do that for the next couple of weeks. I think until the week before Christmas. We'll take them in there, or you can go right to our site at darknessradio.com, click on the radionics box, and order yours. And if your name is picked and you've already ordered one, you'll get a full refund for that. And for those of you that are sending them in that has not purchased one, you may get a chance to win an almost $300 radionics box. So go check that out at darknessradio.com. Stay tuned. We have more coming your way right after this. Good evening. Welcome back to the show. The Omniverse, Transdimensional Intelligence, Time Travel, the Afterlife, and the Secret Colony on Mars. Our guest this evening, Alfred Lambermont Weber. And Alfred, coming back into this, you talked about the fact that we're at this new precipice, that things are coming into a position where we're going to be able to do replicable experiments and prove the theories and belief systems behind the Omniverse and behind these different aspects. But it still sounds like a lot of it is just conjecture and possibilities as opposed to reality of proof. And I know you were talking about when you go to court and how you have to prove, certain things beyond a reasonable doubt, and you have to be able to prove things to people to show them that this is what is acceptable. But in these kind of cases, isn't it where the problem breaks down between skepticism, science, and the fantasy is what is considered proof.
Right, right. Well, look, you asked me, how do you prove the existence of the soul in the afterlife, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the methodologies that we have, and this goes to proof not beyond a reasonable doubt, but proof more probably than not, and that's a different threshold. And
right,
what
but
we're
then
dealing with
does that
there
mean that
is
science will accept it, though?
Is a database of more than 7,000 cases of soul memories of the interlife. And this is where you have a standard laboratory protocol for hypnotic regression with trained therapists who take subjects into hypnotic regression and lead them through their recounting of their memories of their time in the interlife. What the interlife is another word of the afterlife, but it's more reincarnation friendly, because in reincarnation...
But who's setting up the protocols to say, because hypnotherapy, from my understanding, is still not a proven enough science that all science accepts it.
Well, you know, this is this is data. This is replicable data according to a standard protocol, and
But kind of following up with that again, who set the standard for that protocol when a lot of science still does not accept hypnotherapy as a true science in itself? How do you set a protocol for something which isn't universally recognized?
Well, you can set protocols in many, many different sciences. For example, the two key sciences in the study of the omniverse are exopolitics and parapsychology. And the study of the afterlife, in this case, falls into the area of parapsychology, which is the study of expanded human abilities, including telepathy. And what we found is that two of the prime characteristics of the omniverse, that is, the way that it functions, is number one, the prime communication mode in the omniverse is telepathy, and the prime transportation mode is teleportation. Now, those are two areas, for both of which there is proof, and both of which are studied. Telepathy has been studied in the U.S. Very closely, going back to the 1930s at Duke with Rhine. You have the American Society for Psychical Research. You have a very developed body of scientific knowledge in parapsychology. Now, the issues that you are raising is whether exopolitics and parapsychology are part of the scientific canon, and that is a matter of evolution, and that is more and more universities are beginning to acknowledge the expanded aspects of human consciousness, and to allow and to permit and to authorize courses of study in parapsychology on telepathy and on allied areas in their courses of of study, so that there isn't the blanket stonewalling of these areas by the canon that there was back in the 50s, so that we're dealing with frontier sciences, and but that doesn't make it any less science. In the same way, many of the theories that in physics and in other sciences are theories that are just have been developed over the last decade, and so we have rigorous scientific protocols that have been developed by scientists such as Dr. Michael Newton and others that have reviewed over 7,000 cases of individuals that have gone in through hypnotic regression and have accessed their memories, their soul memories of what occurred in the interlife. And this is not only in the interlife. For example, if you take the work of Professor Ian Stevenson, who passed over just recently, but he was a professor at the University of Virginia Medical School, and his studies of reincarnation are highly scientific, and they're all based on protocols, and they include hypnotic regression, and that is the time typically children between the ages of 3 and 9 will have spontaneous memories of their prior lives in which they'll give detailed descriptions of their immediate prior life, which then can be gone back and can be checked up on. And this is the work that Dr. Ian Stevenson did at the University of Virginia Medical School, which is being carried on. So that what they're using here are fairly standard social science techniques and protocols which qualify as the scientific, as the.
But then why do you think science on the whole is not accepting the theory of reincarnation as an actual event? I mean, you've got some compelling, just like you've got the near-death experiences, which are very compelling, and they've put the signs up in the ceilings and on the ceiling tiles and places where the soul claims to kind of hang out, and people are witnessing and reporting back these little symbols that some of the hospitals have set up to test that protocol, and they're getting the results that they were expecting because they're getting these quote-unquote out-of-body experiencers to tell about these certain designs very clearly and concisely, but yet science still is not looking at it on the whole as a recognizable fact or truth.
Yeah, but I submit, since we're having a kind of a back and forth here, I submit that what you're using as the word science is not accurate.
Okay.
There isn't a scientific canon, and there isn't an authority someplace that says this isn't science, because.
Well, actually, there's a lot of people that come out and say that isn't. They refer to it as pseudoscience and fracture
that's not true. I mean, more and more the work of Dr. Ian Stevenson and more the work of the parapsychologist is accepted. And it's funded. I mean, when I was at Stanford Research Institute, the CIA funded to in the millions of dollars my colleagues' work on remote viewing, which is in the same area as telepathy and clairvoyance. And so here you have the CIA and the U.S. Department of Defense putting tens of millions of dollars and relying the U.S. spy system on remote viewing, which has to do with expanded abilities of the human mind, which are
they've
in the
also
same family as telepathy, precognition, and other expanded abilities of the human mind. So there isn't now, more often than not, the individuals that are expressing those opinions are individuals who have been discredited in science because they represent prejudices from the past that are not at all, valid. And all of the programs that I've been associated with in my more than 40 years experience, which include programs where the CIA and the Department of Defense has put in tens of millions of dollars, consider these abilities of the human race to be very, very well within the scientific canon.
But a lot of those sciences and a lot of the, taking out the word science, a lot of those research programs have been abandoned and considered either extremely flawed and ineffective for what they were trying to do. When you look at the Project Stargate and you look at some of the other remote viewing programs, they're no longer officially working. They're not something that still exists. We have to take a break. We'll come back. We've got more with our guests. Stay tuned. This is Darkness Radio. Alfred Lambermont Weber, our guest this evening. With the book you've got out, it's officially released on November 22nd, The Omniverse, Transdimensional Intelligence, Time Travel, the Afterlife, and Secret Colony on Mars. Talk to me a little bit about the secret colony on Mars. How do we know that this actually exists? And every day we see something in the news of somebody saw Bigfoot on Mars, somebody saw a Land Rover that was left over on Mars, somebody saw a microwave left on Mars. I mean, it just seems to be a joke at this point that there might have actually been something there of any substantial nature besides some running water at one point. What do you believe is actually the truth?
Yeah, well, based on my investigation and personal interactions and interviews with about a dozen persons who have been at the secret bases on Mars, and based on my study of the Mars rover photographs, in my capacity as chairman of the Mars Anomaly Research Society, I believe that there's good reason to conclude that the U.S. has had an active colonizing presence on Mars since the 1960s, and that in the 1980s forward, this expanded under the aegis of the Mars Colony Corporation, whose chief operating officer was a guy who flunked out of Yale when he was a sophomore, and I was a freshman. His name was Richard B. Cheney, and that Dick Cheney has behind the scenes been sort of the chief operating officer of the Mars Colony Corporation, and I've interviewed Marine officers who have been deployed as part of the Marine contingent guarding the civilian Mars colony. members of the civilian Mars colonies. I've spoken to a number of different people who have been on Mars in many different capacities, and I myself had my first book, Exopolitics, my first book in this area, was called Exopolitics, which founded the science of exopolitics, was in fact time traveled by the CIA through secret time travel from 2005, when it was published, back to 1971. And so that the CIA had 40 years advanced knowledge of my kind of reporting in this area. And so the national security state follows not only my reporting, but the reporting of a whole group of us who are whistleblowers, Mars experiencers. The Mars experiencers include the current President of the United States, Barack Obama, who in 1980 was at the College of the Siskiyous, attended a summer Mars preparation course there, and then performed a number of jumps to Mars via the jump room technology. I've spoken to his roommate on Mars. I've spoken to
Dr. Andrew Basiago? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I've spoken to three people who interacted with Obama on Mars, and it's all congruent what they say.
But isn't there, and not meaning to throw a monkey wrench in, but Basiago has also claimed he's going to win the 2016 presidential election. And
I spoke to him yesterday, and that's not what he claims.
Okay, well, it was, he made the claim, I think, a year or so ago on another show, and that's why I was curious where that came from.
He says that he has been told by CIA time travel, who in fact pre-identified George Bush Sr., George Bush Jr., Barack Obama, and Bill Clinton as future presidents. He was told back then that he would be a future president, but he doesn't know the year. And, he may or may not be a future president. He unlike Bush Jr., Bush Sr., Clinton, and Obama, Andy Basiago chose to become a whistleblower and to go public on this. So I don't know what effect that is going to happen. That is going to have on as to whether or not he becomes a president. But that does not at all, I think, undercut any of the research that we've done with his colleagues, and any of the research that we've done, in fact, on Bush Jr., Bush Sr., Obama, and
but doesn't Clinton, it seem like if time travel exists,
identification?
If time travel exists and you have whistleblowers, it would be easy enough to eradicate those whistleblowers by just simply traveling in time and taking them out of the equation before they blow the whistle.
Yeah, and in 2005, I was a speaker at a conference in Hawaii when I received a call from Andy Basiago stating that he had just been talked to by a representative from the George W. Bush White House that told him in no uncertain terms that if he continued to speak out about the secret Mars programs and the presidential pre-identification program, quote, they could not guarantee his survival. And so we went public with that. And because of our aggressive publication of this, we believe that we may have played some role in keeping Mr. Basiago, a whistleblower, along with a number of these other whistleblowers alive. And I'm very happy to have done that. And I say that as a civil liberties lawyer who was, has represented people in going back to the Panther 21 trial in New York in 1969 as a representative of the New York civil liberties lawyer, and so I have myself, whenever I see what I think to be a violation of the Bill of Rights, and I taught the Bill of Rights at the University of Texas in the government department. Well, I'll speak out, and sure, I spoke out against the Bush White House on that point, and I made it public. And I've been on CNN, I've been on all of the major networks, and I was lucky enough to have this access, and so they haven't been able to knock off any of these witnesses yet, and God willing, they won't be knocked off.
Right, and we'll pray for your continued safety. The book does come out November.
I'm in Canada. I'm safe.
Or they want you to think you are.
I'm a dual citizen now. I'm out of the line of fire, and I can be of my most service by being in Canada, where it's much more difficult for the assassins of the Bush crime gang and the CIA to take us out.
All right. Well, we will continue wishing you good luck with that. The book, The Omniverse, Transdimensional Intelligence, Time Travel, The Afterlife, and the Secret Colony on Mars, officially launches on November 22nd. You can go find it on Amazon.com. We have a link to our guest's website, to the book site, and more. Go check that out. We need to take a break. We'll come back. Open phone lines if you have questions, 651-989-5855, 651-989-5855. We can discuss what our guest has just spoken about for the last hour and a half. We can talk about your own experiences. Whatever you'd like to discuss, it's all on you for the next hour and a half here on Darkness Radio. We just spent the last 90 minutes speaking with our guest, Alfred Lambermont Weber. His book, The Omniverse, Transdimensional Intelligence, Time Travel, the Afterlife, and the Secret Colony on Mars. I'm getting a lot of really harsh emails and social media comments. But let me say this. Sometimes the greatest minds have a much better ability at mapping things out in writing and putting it together in a book. The book is fascinating, and it's a really interesting look from the press release and the stuff that I got. That's why I thought he would be a great guest to have on. Sometimes they're not always the best orators. I, like most of you, had a hard time following some of the points that he would try to make, and I think maybe that's because there's so much information, so much knowledge he's trying to share, although there seems, Tim, to have been a lot of holes.
There are,
in the theories of what he was explaining, and I couldn't get him to pin down. In one breath, he's saying that we've come up with ways now to do repeatable exercises, experiments, and do this, and we've set protocols. But then science doesn't acknowledge us. Well, you can't use the word science. Well, you can, because science is a science. Science is a form, and in order to progress, they have to have parameters in place. And if they can't even agree on what the rules of those parameters are, there's no way to put it into a category to say this is repeatable, because science will dismiss it.
Right. And you were accurate when you said pseudoscience, because you can't prove a regression as far as hypnotherapy goes over and over and over again. You can't return to that exact same experience. Sometimes you come up with different results. Or
you can, but then how do you know that you're truly getting a regressed memory and not somebody who has a deep fascination? I grew up with a guy, Rick, who is really into the Civil War, read the Red Badge of Courage, and loved the American Revolutionary War, Civil War stuff. Used to paint miniatures. He was in a miniature club. Fascinated, knew the ins and outs. Well, I would be willing to bet you dollars to donuts if we did a past life regression on him, he would be somebody that died in either the Civil or the American Revolutionary War, or perhaps both.
Yeah.
And then how would you be able to discern between what his fascination is? What came first, chicken or the egg? The fascination, which taught him, so when he releases into a hypnotic event, that's what's releasing the information to him. He's calling on all of his knowledge that he has, or was he drawn to that knowledge because of past experiences? And there's no scientific way to map out a repeatable way to prove that this is a real experience and not a vividly imaginative experience. And that's part of the dream issues. That's why our brain is smart enough that while we sleep, it kicks out that not antiseptic, what's the word I'm looking for?
Anesthetic?
Anesthetic, to keep your body from running in place or punching or doing whatever it takes, because the brain is having an experience and can't discern between that being a reality or a dream.
Well, now, we do have a caller on the line who wants to talk to you about the theory about dreams.
All right, John in New York, welcome to the show.
Hey, Dave, how are you?
I'm doing well. John was keeping me company during the social media blitz of people commenting on the topic. And, John, you had a lot to share on this. What did you make of what the guest had to share? And do you feel that he was hitting on some points that made sense? Or what?
Yes, I do. Yeah, I think he was hitting on a lot of the M theory. That's what I was taking it as. And what I want to ask Alfred is, what's his feeling on the dreams? Stephen Hawking had a very good theory about dreams, how it's another reality, another realm that we're living in. Stephen Hawking actually said one time in his dreams that he walks around.
Right.
And what I would like to know is, do you feel that the dreams are another realm that we're living in, another dimension? And I'm going to use the word M theory, because that's where I think that this is a conversation is going to, is M theory. Do you think that we're basically in the multiverse of, when we dream, we're in another area of what we see? Well,
we've had many. I'm always hesitant to use the word expert. We've had many experts on the show who've researched this and are fascinated by it, and that is their belief that the dream realm is just another level of existence. And that's why we have, because one of the things that I always found curious about some of my dreams was I would have sequel dreams where I would have a dream, and I know this is picking up from a dream I had years ago. And it's just like I've just stepped back into that dream, into that consciousness, and I'm conscious of that moment when it happens in the dream. So is lucid dreaming, these places that we visit and sites that we see and things that we do, is that another form of reality and consciousness, or is it nothing more than just internal in our brain and it's just chemicals and electrons firing off?
Right. That's what I want to know. Right. Is it another realm, or are we just, is it make believe?
Well, I think that's part of what everybody discusses when they talk about the holographic universe and all of these different theories, and that we have the God particle within us that we have the ability to create, and that when we die, heaven is what we've always perceived it to be. Hell will be what we've created it to be.
Right. And I think they actually aren't they trying to prove that right now? The God particle.
Yeah, but how do you, again, there's only, it's a lot of conjecture. It's a lot of theory and ideas bandied about. But again, how do we would need to be able to sit down and set a protocol for this type of deal that would be acceptable across the board. And I think that would be insanely hard because, I've talked to some of the greatest minds in the skeptic field, and I'm fascinated by people like Dr. Michael Shermer. And I love the way his mind works.
Right.
I love the way his mind works, and I like the practical look at it. And I've talked to illusionists, and I've seen illusionists do things that to anybody else would seem supernatural and outside of the realm of normal, hence paranormal. And if our mind can be that easily tricked and deceived, even though we know it's being tricked and deceived, but we still believe that what we're seeing has a hint of reality to it, I just don't see how anybody could come up with a set of protocols everybody's going to be happy with.
Well, do you remember what I said to you, glimpses, when I said glimpses?
Right.
Like, are we seeing glimpses of what is there in that multiverse of what we, you know what I mean? Like, you know how people, they think they see ghosts or they think they see UFOs or something like that? Is it glimpses of, like, a different realm that we're living in? We're kind of getting that little grasp, that little bit of, like, a taste of what is out there.
Could it also be things along the nature? Okay, let's remove the idea of multiverses. Let's remove the idea of alternate realities and parallel universes. Let's just submit that there's only one existence and it's taking place right now. There is no future. It hasn't been mapped out, and the past is unrecognizable. We can't go back to it. But if we are truly all energy, which we know science has proven we are energy is connected. Could it be that these moments in dreamscape or whatever we are is nothing more than wires crossing with other people's wires? We're seeing glimpses into their realities or their dreams or their mental, experiences. What we perceive to be an alien, is it because it is an alien or because of what we're picking up from the person that we're tapping into energetically? It's like
that holograph.
Right. Because, when people talk about, when people talk about the fact that they're connected, you start to think about Tim and all of a sudden my phone rings and it's Tim. You start to think about a friend and somebody you haven't talked to in years and suddenly there's an email from them. We've all had the old grandma saying when your ears ring and someone's talking about you, that whole kind of concept, right? Right, exactly. And could it be that we are just energetically connected and that these moments and these things that we experience are simply overlays of something else that's going on? And a lot of times we experience what people perceive to be the paranormal in moments when our consciousness is not always necessarily focused, right? We're folding laundry, we're sitting on the toilet, we're just, kind of your mind is out there in the stratosphere anyway, and then you hear something or you experience something. Well, again, could it just be at that moment your receiver is wider open and you're actually picking up on an experience from somebody else nearby, somebody you're connected to in your family? Right. And it's that connection. It's that connection, of every being, everything, every life force that could ever happen is what's going on. Right. I can go with that, yeah. Right. All right. Fascinating stuff. Jen, thanks a lot for giving us a call. We have to take, we got another break here, Tim, we're up against. Is that right? Yeah, so let's take a break. We'll come back. Phone lines are open if you want to debate, talk about this, have different theories and beliefs, or you have your own paranormal encounters. You can give us a call, 651-989-5855, 651-989-5855 to be a part of Darkness Radio. Science of the Paranormal. Can you trust your own mind? I think it's a fascinating article with a great look at how the brain works and how it understands and perceives things. You can find it by going to TwinCitiesNewsTalk.com. TwinCitiesNewsTalk.com, keyword darkness, and you'll be able to find that and all of the other cool things we've posted as well, including one of my all-time favorite paranormal encounter stories that we talked about last week on the show. A mom who related her parashare story calling herself world's worst mother. It was truly one of the best stories we've read in a long time. Made me laugh physically out loud. Hopefully you guys will enjoy it as well. Go check that out. But Science of the Paranormal, Can You Trust Your Own Mind? That's the new article we're going to place up on the site. Tim, you look at this stuff, and again, I'm fascinated by it all. I really wanted this interview to go more smoothly. I liken it much to the interview we did last week. I think that the topic is interesting. I think the content is interesting. I just, unfortunately, both of the authors did not seem to be able to convey this concept properly.
That's fair, yeah.
And I'm not putting them down or slamming them. Like I said, sometimes it's a lot easier to write out these thought out ideas than it is to try to share them orally. And we know that because sometimes it's hard to even ask the questions when you know what you want to ask, but you don't know how to get there. That's why, a lot of times people will say, you pause. Why do you go? Because sometimes I want to try to figure out a different way to ask a question, or is there a way to get to what I really want to know and not have this generic link? So I can only guess on the other side, how do you convey this big universal message in a soundbite?
Well, there are a few that can do it.
Right.
There are a few people who deal in science that can do it because they do have time to write out that particularly long theory and make it make sense. And then they submit it to an editor who says, you know what, you're still not making sense to me. Here's how you do it. The other thing that perplexed me about our guest, too, is he's a lawyer or claims to be a lawyer. If you're a lawyer at some time or another, you have to go in front of a judge or a jury, and you have to be able to explain your concept or get your argument across in order to win your argument and win the case. If you can't summarize it, even in a closing argument or on a program where you have limited time. Let's say this particular author went on a show where he's only got 8 to 10 minutes in a segment to describe what the book is about and what his theory is about. He wasn't going to make it. He just wasn't going to make it. The longer we went on, it seemed the more complex and kind of muddied the water became with the entire theory in general. So, yeah, I guess it's a good lesson to all scientists out there that are aspiring to be an author and have their work published. You have to publish at a third grade reading level, and you have to communicate as such. Otherwise, you're not going to get your point across.
Right, and that's not putting down you, the listeners, or us as hosts, but sometimes you need to simplify the theory behind what you're speaking about. And I really felt like there was a lot there, and I was afraid 2 hours wasn't going to be enough. And unfortunately, 90 minutes in, I felt like I still hadn't even cracked the egg.
You'd hit the wall.
Yeah,
pretty
so
much.
It was, trying to get past that. Fascinating guy, and I wish him a lot of luck with his book. Mm-hmm. I do have to laugh, though, as we talk about, not at him, but we talk about things like the concept of time travel and whistleblowers and the danger. And again, if you believe that time travel exists, I don't believe whistleblowers would exist. I really don't, because if there's this dark shadow, covert government conspiracy that wants to keep us quiet, right? They would have very easily they'd have popped in, grabbed Lee Harvey Oswald, popped out, and had him up actually in the book depository, right? They would have done what they needed to do to make more sense of the claims that are made, and they would have erased Andrew Basiago, or they would have erased our guest from the timeline already.
Yes.
They would have just gone in and seen where they were going to be the hiccup in the society, or right before they started to become the whistleblower. Because I understand if you go back and take them out of the equation from birth, you might also upset the balance of the experiment that they were running. They may have needed the experiment to go to a certain degree, but once the person gets to the point of wanting to talk about it, it'd be easy enough to
get rid of him.
And you know what? You wouldn't even have to kill him. You pull a Weeping Angels on the guy. You go, you pick him up in the past, just before he whistleblows, you take him further back and throw him into, 1873, when everybody will just think he's a raving lunatic.
There you go.
So, interesting stuff. We're going to take a break. We'll open up phone lines. If you have your own paranormal encounters you'd like to discuss, what are your thoughts on time travel? Will it ever be proven? Can we time travel, and can we do it in our own minds? Give us a call, 651-989-5855, and be a part of Darkness Radio. Time travel, the concept that we can move beyond our realm and interact with the future or the past. I don't know if we've ever actually chatted about that, Tim. I mean, we've talked about a lot in 10 years.
Yeah.
But time travel, do you believe that concept to be real?
I would like it to be real.
Well, sure, we'd all like it to be real. We'd love the idea of being able to see and visit other times and places. But do you think, theoretically, do you believe it's possible? Do you believe that is something we should be able to do?
I tend to be very skeptical when it comes to that. I don't believe so, no.
Yeah, I think there's just too many universal laws. I'd love to believe that there is something going on, but I just can't believe that humankind is too destructive. And whoever found that technology first, who would police or lord over it? Right?
Yeah.
Somebody would have to make that discovery first, and that person would rule the world.
You would think.
Oh, pretty much.
Unless it's a scientist who's honest to God, just happens upon it and knows.
Right, but whoever they bring it to, whatever government finds that and brings it out, I can't believe that it wouldn't open up a cataclysmic event because, listen, we want to believe our government is there to protect us, watch over us. And obviously most people, and probably a lot of our audience that listens, do not believe that. That they all seem to have kind of nefarious reasons for doing a lot of different things, and that we are not necessarily their first priority. Well, I think much like Hitler's idea of domination of the air for war, that if he could create these UFO craft that could move at breakneck speeds and do what he was hoping they could do, you dominate the air, you dominate the war. If we could dominate time, I don't even believe, I just have a hard time fathoming. It'd be great to believe that at some point we're going to be such a universal mind that we could exist in a time where we could go back and visit, we could go back and document and see the past, and somebody would not get delusions of grandeur. I mean, look, it didn't even work out so good in heaven. Right? God created all according to the Bible, which means he created the angels, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he created angels who thought that they were on par or equal with their creator. And it didn't work out so well. So if even in an angelic realm, in a heavenly place, it can't happen, I have no faith that humanity will ever be at a place where we could trust anybody with the ability to time travel.
You could not trust authority with it. We'll put it that way.
You couldn't trust anybody with it. Listen, I would love to say that I would use it properly if given the opportunity. That's why, I really loved the movie About Time. It was a really great look at time travel and not using time travel for what we always would think, right? We're not going to go back and kill Hitler. We're not going to go back and place a bet or, invest in the stocks and change or alter the parameters of time, but instead using it for love, which is an amazing take on this, right? And I just love the movie About Time because of that. I thought it was a great concept. I thought the way they executed it was well. And I would love to think that I could be that guy whose only focus would be to love and enjoy my family more and make a better experience for everybody that I know and love. But man, I couldn't. I could not. I would not. I would end up screwing it up. I can't think of one person that wouldn't.
I would put it in the hands of a historian or a true journalist, someone who could go back without affecting events and be able to verify that what happened actually happened.
Right, but then again, parameters. How do you select somebody who wouldn't go back and have some kind of skin in the game? You would have to take somebody almost in a psychopathic or sociopathic way who believe themselves above reproach so they could go see the horrendous crimes of 9/11 or the Holocaust and not feel compelled to interject themselves into the story or into the timeline. I don't know that there's anybody on earth that couldn't do that. If you had the chance to put the bullet in Hitler's head and stop what occurred, or to ground those planes, who wouldn't have done that? Who wouldn't have made those changes?
But you have to have one theory that works into all of this, and that is that you're an active part of that universe. When you time traveled, you could very well be an outsider that can't touch that reality.
Right. But then again, that's what I'm saying. I don't see time travel ever being a reality because of humanity's downfalls and our gluttonous nature.
I, believe it or not, think it is because we won't develop that quickly going into the future before something catastrophic happens. I think it'll be a matter of time, not a matter of if we can or can't get there. It's just we won't develop quickly enough.
I agree. Interesting stuff either way. Just fascinating. I love this kind of stuff. I love the talk and the ideas behind it. Adam in Wisconsin, welcome to the show. What did you want to talk about?
Hey, guys. I just wanted to add on the conversation about time travel. Just wanted to kind of address that it is kind of a possibility of itself, but I guess just because of the reality that right now we are technically traveling through time and space at a certain interval. But I think with this certain idea of I guess our different perspectives of time can definitely kind of alter, I guess, time itself or our kind of own, I guess, genetic path of what time is. But it also has something to do with like the what a lot of people call like the third eye and what is used to kind of dream and stuff like that and kind of hear things that aren't there and kind of just kind of stuff like that. But I do believe that time travel is a possibility, maybe not to the extent of going to Hitler and that kind of thing, but I think that we can definitely tap into it, but in a minuscule kind of sense.
Well, in a sense, that's what remote viewing is the idea that we can tap into that aspect of our consciousness and see time. We could see time, we could see experiences, but again, then you just have to start to be able to, how would we discern what is real and what we're imagining to be real?
Well, I guess that all just kind of depends on, or goes down to the question of the answer why and everything like that. But I kind of believe that it's not just one answer. It's not just that it's, this big. It's like God's creating everything and telling everybody what to do. But it's also nothing at all. I think it's somewhere in between. And I think where we are is we're just somewhere in between of this, organism of energy that is the universe that we call God, and then it just being completely nothing at all. So within that, it's, I think if you kind of understand that whole big picture of God and, and the universe being nothing at all, it kind of adds a third perspective, which what the third eye would be classified to be if you were able to tap into your brain. But if you look if you go to like YouTube and stuff like that, you can type in telekinesis and you'll find with their, with their minds, and it's actually a really ancient.
Well, that's if you buy into the fact that it isn't being faked or manipulated on camera. There's some famous telekinetic experiments that were done in supposed scientific laboratory experiments where they have now been outed and explained how they moved the items using magnets underneath the table. So,
well, yeah. I mean, I'm not talking about Chris Angel or David Blaine. Or,
no. I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking legitimate cases where they believe that it was being done in a scientific setting with a protocol in play, and they've admitted afterwards that the way that the pencil was moving on the table was a magnet underneath the table, and it wasn't an illusionist. It was supposedly science going in. I know that, Randy, the amazing Randy, was involved in some experiments that he had people infiltrate, and they would play these games and mess with the scientists running the experiment and create things to look real that were not.
Right.
Yeah.
But I wish I could bring the name of this video up, but there is kind of an ancient kind of it sounds cliche when say ancient, but there's this kind of like old it's pretty much manipulating the energy within your body, within the energy around you. And if you can become meditative enough to, kind of blindly go with the energy of, say, the world or the whole universe, for that matter. But if you can go within that and, have a third eye, mind's eye of, understanding of the energy around you, and it's not like a mathematical, scientifical, complex thought. It's just a general feeling, like a meditative feeling. There is a video where it's like Stan Lee, like the writer of like Marvel comics and stuff like that, kind of had a video on it. But this, I think he was Russian or German, but he actually moved a pencil with neurological scientists having a kind of like probes on him, but they measured the brain activity that was going on, and he said once he was in a meditative state to move the pencil, all of a sudden there was a mass amount of gamma rays that were being produced from his body and his mind that were relatively 2 or 3 times the amount of someone who would be having a stroke, kind of thing. So it's like,
it's definitely worth a look. We'll check that out. Adam, thanks a lot for calling in and being part of the show. I have a problem when you're looking at a TV show that's based on entertainment.
Yeah.
And especially Stan Lee's, because it wasn't that he had a series. It was like Stan Lee's Real Life Superheroes or something, and it was watching all these. But that harkens back to the story I was talking about with the scientific protocols that were being done and the pencil moving on the table. And later they have acknowledged that they were doing it with a gentle blowing, which you could not see on the camera, or they were manipulating it with magnets under the table. So I don't, there's no way to know which one of those videos is the legitimate one. And there's so many things that are fake now online. You just can't blindly accept that what you found on YouTube is a legitimate piece of science. It's sad to say, right? Because it'd be great to be able to see some of this stuff and experience it and see what is behind it. I think, the idea that telekinesis exists, I think in a sense does. I don't know that it'll ever be as powerful as use the Force, Luke, and drawing things to you. I think we may have little outbursts of energy released. There's a form of martial arts. Do you know which one I'm talking about? Where they claim to be able to knock you down with just the power of chi or something like that. And I can't remember what it's called, but there are a few that they claim they can stop your heart. And they've done experiments with this, and it's quite violent. But again, what they're doing is very Dragon Ball Z, pulling together their Kamehameha and hitting you with this energy force that knocks you over. I want to say it's like Kung something or other, but
it's an energy art. Yeah, there's actually a
because there's
video
one, like the killing touch is part of that, right?
That I'm not sure of.
Yeah. And I'm sure we have a learned listener out there that's more familiar with that than I am. And I, for the life of me, cannot remember the name of it. It's Kung Pao chicken or something. I can't.
I had that for dinner.
Yeah. Was it delicious?
Oh, it was great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just don't know. And then, you start to look at, the concept. And it was the first time I kind of mentioned it tonight was, we talk about time travel or reincarnation or the dream states. How do we know that what we're doing, what we're experiencing isn't actually past lives? It isn't truly paranormal. It's simply, in the dream state or meditative state, what we are doing is we're achieving an energy protocol where we're tapping in, we're connecting with other humans in a human Ethernet. And ideas and beliefs and thoughts and imagery is being shared. And maybe that's why so many people wake up with the same idea for something that hasn't existed or, it's because they're all tapping into that filter of information that already is out there and exists. And the memories we believe that we're having from reincarnation are nothing more than a younger soul that as it passed through to be born, it kind of like a dust bunny collected that energy as it came through and has these false memories, and that's why it fades. Not so much that it was, Mr. Smith in its past life, but it passed through his trail. Do you know what I mean by that, Tim? Your form leaves an energy, and they can actually, and they've shown this now with different camera technologies, they can go and show a house, and you could see energetic spots where people were, right? Mm-hmm. So how do we know that as we're being born, we just don't come through, that energy doesn't just come through and kind of pick up that soul residue of somebody else's life, and you have what you believe to be your memories? But the reason they're so spotty is they're truly not yours. They're just an energetic pattern that your brain picked up on.
That's a good question.
Like a radio or a TV signal that came in. Did somebody call in with that answer for us?
They didn't have the right answer, but there's something called chi fighting, which essentially is what you're talking about. It's using telekinesis to...
Yeah, but there's one form, and I can't remember what it's called. Anyhow, but it's power transference, and it's the understanding of how power works, how you can focus. But again, I have not yet seen it, and I certainly don't want to, I don't want somebody to use the death touch on me to show it to me and prove that it exists. I'll skip that part of it, Tim. I'm kind of old-fashioned that way.
Yeah, I would too.
But the time travel philosophy of our mind, that which we focus on, can we affect our own past? And when we were talking to our guest a few weeks ago about that on Back to the Future Day, I thought it was intriguing, isn't it, that, we focus on our mistakes, right? And when you think about a day where you just had a really bad, horrible day, how many times did an alarm go off in your head and you thought, I should not do this, and you did it anyway?
Oh, many times.
And then you sit back and you kick yourself in the future thinking, damn it, why didn't I listen? Why didn't I knew I shouldn't have done that. I knew I shouldn't have done that, and I did it anyway. But what was it telling us? Some people call it intuition. Is it truly intuition, or is it a place memory that we already have for what took place, playing back creating like a wave in a pond. That rock hit and it continues to ripple forward and backward.
I'll go even more skeptical.
Which may make you why you're more uncomfortable getting into a situation. And it's not so much deja vu as it's you feel that ripple effect of already knowing how it's going to go down before you get there.
I would present the cynical part of it, and every scientist will tell you that every animal on the planet has some sort of instinct, and it's an instinct for survival.
Right.
And that you're combating against your known nature, and that's why your instinct is going off telling you, well, I shouldn't do this, but I'm going against it anyways. You're fighting what's natural instinct to accomplish a goal or a goal you think you're going to get to. And that's what most scientists will tell you. Well, you have the exact same instinct that a deer has, that a bear has, that a fish has for survival, and you're going against that instinct.
Well, but I don't even mean just the instinct for survival. I'm talking something happened today, and you just knew if you know if what you're about to say could be taken horribly wrong, horribly out of place, could cost you your job, could cost you a relationship or a friendship, but yet you say it anyway, even though you heard that screaming in your head, but don't do this.
But again, that would be a form of survival or avoiding danger.
But why this time as opposed to tomorrow? Nothing told me not to put my foot in my mouth. Why is it that there's only specific moments in time? And then you think about it, those are the moments we think about and reflect upon most. So could it be that we are sending a telepathic message to ourselves, trying to manipulate time because we're focused on it for so long? Unfortunately, very few of us go through life where I pooped the bed on that one. Well, anyway, upward and onward. We always sit back and we think about our failures. We think about the what-ifs and the should-have-beens and the could-have-beens.
Yeah.
And it could just be, I wonder if it's our own psyche striking back, trying to make that difference. And I wonder if it's, of course, it's all conjecture because we'll never know. Did it change you? Did you, in the original timeline, follow that path? But this time you did not. And then that's when you start breaking into the idea of parallel worlds and universes. See, I have a hard time with that, too. As much as I'd love to believe that, and as much as I think that sometimes these ideas that we've had, like who brought Kirk Douglas back from the dead, right? Mm-hmm. That kind of global consciousness thing, I'd love to think that maybe we are just jumping from lifetime to lifetime and we're continuing this journey. So we do get one full long life, but we're not necessarily doing it in a linear fashion. We're doing it like a step. And every time we've died or we've left a different plane of reality, we continue on in the next one. That'd be a great way to think about it and consider it. But I have a hard time with the whole idea that every action that you take, there's an opposite reaction that you also took in an alternate universe.
I have a hard time believing that, too. And by the way, Kirk Douglas is 99 this week.
Hey, happy birthday, Kirk Douglas.
There's a picture of him and Michael together online.
And I've had a lot of people asking me about that question again, too, of where is this coming from? Is it some kind of global, deal? Did we all have a shift? Are we part of our consciousness coming from another reality? Or could it just be that 100 monkey theory? Could it just be there are enough people who misunderstood the news story about Michael Douglas talking about his father that it created a bit of a global consciousness? And everybody has their own frequency, which, again, I hate to use that term so glib, but everybody kind of vibrates and works in a different energetic way, according to the beliefs, right? So could it just be that everybody kind of in my frequency range picked up on that false memory? And the reason you don't have that memory is because you're in a different frequency, and the people in that did not have that false memory. You know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying.
So maybe enough people misunderstood, which is easily acceptable. I mean, look at how many times people make a simple mistake online and it like wildfire spreads before somebody realizes the problem. Now, a year from now, we may not remember that somebody ended up owning up to that mistake, but we remember this being said. We remember somebody saying, yeah, Michael Jackson had a rhinoceros horn in his forehead when he was born. There's no proof for it, but we had heard it enough that it kind of becomes part of reality because we've heard it, right? Mm-hmm. And enough people are focused on it and believe in it. That's why old wives' tales have always been so successful and succinct, right? Mm-hmm. You have these rules and parameters that were put in place by somebody. We can't always find an original jumping off point for it, but enough people believed in it that it just becomes part of who we are.
I think you might be right on in the middle of that theory somewhere. I'll give you an example that I read today. Today, I run across an article that talks about Michael Jackson's real son, the son of the Billie Jean from the song, and they tell you exactly who Billie Jean was. Now, if you remember, years ago, they came out and supposedly identified who Billie Jean was, and it was supposed to be a fan.
Right.
In this article, they identify the real Billie Jean as a singer by the name of Mickey Howard, who's a jazz singer, who was signed under contract to Papa Jackson's management company. Okay? So
just ridiculous, Tim.
And when they
ignorant.
And I forget what the son's name is. I think it's B. Howard. And TMZ had paid for a DNA test that they later said was a false test or a fake test because it had been tampered with in some way. So they kind of dropped things at that point. I had remembered the story of this particular person who's now 34 years old and the son of Mickey Howard as they took the test and it was confirmed that he was Michael Jackson's son. However, they didn't think the test was dependable. So they threw it out. And there's little variations. So they said, well, there's no... And I remember a variation of this story where they took the DNA test and it was proven that he was not Michael Jackson's son. So now my memory, I got to think to myself, okay, my memory's got to be faulty somewhere here because now I'm reading this article that says this. And I remember seeing something else, so I must have not been paying attention. That's the first thing you think of. Well, I probably wasn't paying attention. But now... like you said, could it be that there were certain people that are on my wavelength that saw the exact same story, and then they come back and go, well, wait a minute, that's not how it happened. I remember it happening this way. But is it a faulty memory, or is it that you're seeing another memory from another timeline?
Yeah, I don't know that I buy the other timeline theory. And that's so fun about this whole aspect of what we talk about. Things will really hit home with me for a while. And I'll really be passionate about it, and I'll read what I can and watch documentaries about it. And then at some point, it just suddenly turns off to me, and I'm like, I don't believe any of that. Because people ask me, do you really believe in all the things you talk about? I believe in different aspects of all the things we talk about. Sure. I believe in the concepts, the beliefs, the theories and hypotheses behind most of what we speak about. I don't know. Even having seen what I've seen, I don't know that what I've actually experienced is alien in nature, although I cannot understand what that craft was. It doesn't mean that it wasn't something that we did create. And when I saw what I perceived to be a Bigfoot when I was a kid, and I've talked to a bunch of different Bigfoot researchers about this, I'm reluctant to always say, I refer to it as Bigfoot because that's the title I gave it after the fact. I didn't realize what it was when I looked at it. Mm-hmm. And when I experienced it, it's only the memory afterwards that then I have to question, well, how much of this is true memory and how much of it is now things that I've learned since then that I've overlaid in what I know or what I thought I knew. So I question these things. Where I was 10 years ago in belief of ghosts is a totally different place than I am now.
Well, I think people have to remember when it comes to a show like this, they have a term in Europe that's wonderful for a talk show host, and they're called a presenter. And there's a reason they're called a presenter, because you're bringing other people's views forward and other people's experiences forward. And it's not for the host to decide. It's not for the host to judge. It's for the people watching or listening to that program to say, does this resonate with me or does it not? If it does, great. If it doesn't, well, throw it away and look for something else.
Yeah. Yeah, very weird. Let's take a quick break. We'll come back. We're just bandying about tonight some thoughts and ideas. If you'd like to weigh in, give us a call, 651-989-5855, 651-989-5855. Qigong is the technique that we were looking for.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's considered a martial art or an energy form, but it's Qi, C-H-I-G-O-N-G, two different words, Qigong. And I want to thank Larry Miller for shooting that over to me. We'll be back with more Darkness Radio right after this.
I had to make an example.
Hi, Dave. Hi, Tim. Nice Doctor Who reference, by the way. As you pointed out, the big problem with time travel is people could be taken out of time to cover up or stop a major incident in history. A time traveler would become a god of sorts, and people like Hitler would have just disappeared just before taking power. Tesla would have gotten the funds needed to produce his great works, and so on. Our history would be pretty bland if someone from the future could come back and fix everything that went wrong, which, in paradox, would mean that they wouldn't need to travel in the first place. I think we can mentally travel back to witness the past with limits, but don't believe the future has happened yet, even if in another dimension. Another great show. Thank you. And that's from Dave in Cave Junction.
Well, he brings up a good point, and that is, what if time travel were mental only, where it was something where
how do you discern if it's a real experience
you couldn't.
Or a dreamed or imagined experience?
Right, you couldn't. There'd be no way.
I have a philosophy on it.
Shoot.
I can't.
Why?
Because it's actually one
You're
of the few
gonna do
things. No, it's one of the few things I've been putting into a book form.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of funny, right? Stephanie Meyer, who wrote the Twilight series, she wrote it because she got this twinkling of an idea of sparkly vampires, and that kind of spawned it for her. It was in a dream. In a dream, I had something explained to me about time travel and how it relates to ghosts, memories, things that go bump in the night. And it was kind of a fascinating little deal. And I don't know where it came from, but I've been slowly writing it down and writing it in a novel form as an entertainment source, but using all of the ideas that I was given.
Cool.
So I've got something I'm working on. I might just self-publish it instead of trying to go through a publishing house.
Yeah.
But I think I've got an interesting take on it that was given to me.
All right. I'm going to spill it. It was downloaded to him by Muppets.
Damn it. That would be my luck, wouldn't it?
Yep. Sparkly Muppets.
No, there's no sparkling involved in mine.
Oh, all right.
None in my aspect. I'll say that. And, I've had two really kind of neat encounters like that. That one was, I'd call it downloaded to me because I remember it coming in like a wave of information given to me in a dream. And I remember waking up from the dream, and here's one of those moments where the dream is still alive in my head. I can remember it. It's very weird, very surreal. And then another encounter with an angel, getting an understanding of the angel hierarchy and how it works. I don't know how to explain it, and I don't know where the information would have come from. But again, is it a consciousness? Is it somebody else's brain cooked it up, and I just happened to be tuned into that station that night, and I picked it up? I'm fascinated by that.
Yeah.
I would love to see. I mean, here's the deal. If we all resonated a certain frequency, there should seem like there's a scientific method in order to figure out when your brain is processing thought, what frequency it is tuned into. And could they then take your brain and with exterior motivation or stimulation put you into the same pocket universe, right? Put you into the same transmission wavelength where we could theoretically communicate telepathically.
So you're talking like a manual telepathy as opposed to being able to just switch it on and off within your own head.
Right. I just wondered, because you would think, again, if we are an energy, there should be a measurable energy around us. There should be something that we can check. And again, we know how to map the brain. We understand how the brain works when we think and when we dream. And when we're thinking, is there a way to figure out what frequency we are broadcasting at? Even if it's in the most subtle frequency, could we then train someone to tune into that frequency? Almost like that Dreamscape movie, which was another one of my favorites from the 80s with Dennis Quaid. Could we get into a place where in our minds we could connect theoretically in a dream state because we're in the same frequency and interact with one another? I don't know. We'll take our final break. We'll keep chatting. We've got phone lines ringing at 651-989-5855, 651-989-5855. Just having some time riffing tonight. If you have a thought, give us a call. We'll be back with more. But Heather in Shakopee has. Heather, welcome to the show.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, Dave, I can't believe you didn't know that last Buffer song.
The Star Trek one.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that
one.
No, that's one of the ones that thankfully got past me in the 80s. What's going on?
Not much. I'm just driving back to South Dakota. I'm a truck driver.
Oh, okay. All right. You caught the show. What did you want to chat about?
Oh, I was just calling to pick on you about not knowing that song because I'm not exactly sure how old you are, but I'm actually fairly young, and I used to hear it every night on Dr. Demento.
Oh, that's interesting because I used to listen to Dr. Demento until probably about 1985, 1986.
Okay.
So, I'll be 48 here next week on the 22nd.
You're not that much older than me then.
Yeah, well, that's good.
Yeah.
But yeah, that one just totally passed me by somehow.
my older sister's favorite song because she was a Star Trek freak.
Very cool. Very cool. So you're out truck driving and hearing the show?
Yep.
Well, thank you very much for checking it out and giving us a call tonight, Heather.
Yep.
Have
Not
a good
problem. Thanks for getting me on.
Hey, no problem. Do you ever see anything weird when you're out trucking? Do you ever see UFOs or strange things?
No, not really. Lately, I have seen a lot of, I call them falling stars, but I know they're asteroids.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen a lot of those this last week, but nothing weird.
How about any cryptids or phantom hitchhikers? Anything like that out there?
No, but I did have one recently in my house that scared the crap out of me.
Well, what was that? Feel free to share it.
I have a really quiet house.
Uh-huh.
Like, nothing ever happens in my house.
Okay.
And my husband wasn't home, and I was walking by the upstairs bathroom, and it sounded like somebody sighed in my ear. I slammed up against the wall and knocked, like, several shelves off the damn wall that he has collector trucks on. And I just stood there, and I was like, what was that? And next thing I know, I was, like, racing down the stairs and about fell on my face because I had never had anything like that. And it felt like somebody was right next to me, and I'm the only one in the house.
And there you have it. Everybody gets that
out of me.
Everybody gets that experience at some point, huh?
I guess. You know, it's not that I didn't believe in it, but I just never figured that would happen.
All right. Heather, thanks a lot for calling in. Take care.
Yeah, not a problem. You have a nice night.
All right. Bye-bye. Have you, Tim, in all the years now, have you seen a big change in what you believe from what we started with what you came into, your preconceived notions of the supernatural and paranormal? Have you changed or shaken much of your paradigms, or do you think you're pretty much still in line with where you were?
No, I think it's changed quite a bit. I would say when I first came in, we first started doing the show in 2006, I think I was fairly closed off to the idea of anything unidentified flying in the sky as being anything other than a government craft or experimental aircraft. At this point, I could buy the theory of life from another planet. It's never been proven to me, but I could buy into it if it could be presented to me.
What changed in your mind that allowed you to think, oh, no, you know what, this is very likely, or could, I'm more open to that idea?
Honestly, through firsthand accounts from people who I thought were unshakable at one particular point. Plus, from having gone out there and I guess looked in the skies myself and seen some things that I go, wait a minute, things aren't supposed to go like that, or we don't have the technology to fly like that, or vice versa. And I think from hearing a lot of different, like we were talking about earlier in the show, hearing a lot of different theories, some of them that resonate with you and others that don't. And a lot of times when I'm sitting here and I'm listening to you interview people, I say to myself and different experts and people who have written books about alien phenomena, there's some stuff to me that I go, you know what, that resonates somewhat true to me. It sounds like that person's maybe on the same wavelength as me. And there's others that I just listen to and I go, wow, medication is needed in your world very, very severely. I just, but I've moved a little off that cynical, firm platform that I was on. Now I'm kind of on the skeptical platform, kind of hanging over the edge and looking into the abyss, so to speak. I at least can buy into the theory now that it might be out there. And I don't think that, there are a lot of people that think like, oh, if you claim you've been abducted or whatever, you've got to be out of your mind or this, that, and the other. I don't think that at all. I think people that believe they've been abducted, believe they've had very real experiences. Now, where they've come from, I don't know. But I can buy into it. I've heard some very compelling things from some very straightforward people that make me question.
All right. What about things like the cryptid world? Where do you fall on that now? Do you believe that there are things out there that, obviously we know, especially places like Papua New Guinea, where they're constantly finding new life, new civilizations? To
me, that's always been the most believable form of the paranormal is cryptos and cryptozoology and cryptids. To me, as you stated, we're finding new species all the time. It's hard to discount something you think you see or know out in the wild because, again, your senses are wide open and you don't know what you're going to run across or what's in that particular patch of woods, depending on your experience in the woods. And I've heard stories from avid sportsmen and people who hang out in the woods quite a bit and say, no, really, I know the difference between the sound of a deer coming through brush, a bear, and definitely what I saw out there. It's almost like going to a police officer and asking them, well, did you really see what you thought you saw? There are some people who are cool, calm, and collected out in the woods that have seen things that they can't explain and would be glad to tell you, I don't know what it is, but this is what I saw. And then you have other people who are so sure it's a cryptid that you shake your head and go, you know what? I think you're believing your own BS here for a second. But that to me has always been the most real part of the paranormal. To me, more real than ghosts, aliens, anything else we talk about on the show, because I believe something like that could pop up in front of you, either in the woods or driving out in a dark country road, running across it, to me, that just seems more fathomable than anything else.
I see and again, having seen something myself, I'm fascinated by the idea that there are things that may exist in the darkest recesses of our civilization, right? These little realms right around the corner that we just don't see, or we just don't notice, or we don't, I got to be honest with you, I have not heard one compelling piece of audio at all that I believe is a Bigfoot sound.
I don't think I have either.
And we've talked to some really cool Bigfoot people and some really intriguing cryptozoologists. There's a video now, if you go see it, there's a mountain lion walking, and they caught it on a trail cam with sound, and it's making this weird noise that sounds a lot like some of the audio we've been sent that is quote-unquote Bigfoot noise.
Interesting.
So even some of these animal linguists, I don't know what they're called, I'll just go with animal linguists, that seem to know the sounds of animals and can tell you, when somebody comes to me and says, no, this is no known animal, and I listen to it and I hear, and I think, that's canine.
Right.
I mean, yeah. But they're mimicking. How the hell can you discern that it's not canine, that it's a Bigfoot mimicking? So I have problems with that.
Yeah.
I will admit, we hung out and talked to Dr. Jeff Meldrum earlier this year, and he set me straight on a lot of stuff. We should really have him on the show and talk, because he took a lot of my perspective of the whole theories behind why aren't there bones, why aren't we finding this, why aren't we getting more compelling evidence, and he had some really intriguing and enlightening sites. So I feel like maybe there is more of that going on out there, but interesting. Anyway, thanks for letting us riff and kind of share some insights and thoughts with you. And we'll be back Friday night, because tomorrow's Thursday Night Football. Friday night, though, we're back with supernatural news from all around the world. Remember, go check out our personality page at TwinCitiesNewsTalk.com. Keyword darkness. We've got 2 brand new stories up there. One is my favorite Parashare story in probably multiple years.